Hello, sweet baby angels. My name is Justine and I will be your host for today. And today's topic is one I am very excited about. We are taking a deep dive into the decentering men movement, but more specifically, how something that was designed to empower women has now been hijacked and co-opted into just yet another cool way to put down the very woman it promised to help. Now, before anyone gets it twisted,
let me be clear.
I am not anti-decenter men. In fact, quite the opposite, which is why I think it's very important to recognize and hopefully mitigate where it might be going wrong. But what even is it in the first place? Have you ever worried you might be boy crazy? Or have you ever just started talking to a guy, find yourself thinking about him way too much, wondering what he's doing, wondering what he thinks of you, wondering what he thinks of those perfect baby names you picked out but fear you might never learn because it's been like 8 hours since you replied to your text? No shame, no shame. I've been there. It's been a while, but I've been there. Now, what if I told you that there's a movement that promises to relieve you of all of that anxiety and help you become the happiest version of yourself, one that truly doesn't crave a man's approval? The decentering men movement started popping up in search trends around July 2023.
No one's my savior.
I was so content.
A canon event for women.
There's other stuff in there.
It has come to my attention that we need to learn how to decenter men.
The idea behind it is simple. It's about encouraging women to stop making men, their approval, their relationships with them, the focal points of their entire lives.
Decentering men does not mean avoiding men completely, but not prioritizing men and instead having an identity outside of being in a romantic relationship. So the question is not how to stop actively caring about men, but how to start actively caring about yourself more.
We know that for so long, society has conditioned women into believing that their worth is directly tied to their relationships with men.
Hanging right next to Martha Stewart living, Carrie Bradshaw dying of embarrassment.
The messaging behind decentering men promotes consciously shifting focus away from male validation and instead centering one's own goals, passions, interests, and self-worth. It's a call to help women find value in who they truly are. Now, the core messaging is nothing new. Feminist theory has historically highlighted the importance of personal autonomy and breaking away from the traditional gender roles that cast women in a subservient position to men.
Never?
Well, maybe someday.
When? Tomorrow?
Oh, no!
Renowned French existentialist Simone de Beauvoir wrote, "Her wings are cut and then she is blamed for not knowing how to fly. Self-knowledge is no guarantee of happiness, but it is on the side of happiness and can supply the courage to fight for it. The curse which lies upon marriage is that too often the individuals are joined in their weakness rather than in their strength, each asking from the other instead of finding pleasure in giving." I think these truly get at the heart of the movement and also importantly highlight one of the factors that I haven't talked about yet. Women or anyone placing more importance on truly knowing and finding themselves is helpful for the health of all relationships. Someone can hear a catchphrase like decenter men and think it's an anti-man movement, but in reality, it's actually helpful for everybody because somebody who is trying to fit a certain mold, an idea of what they think they should be, is not a sustainable endeavor that leads to resentment, that leads to pent-up emotions, passive aggressiveness, just overall unhappiness for all parties involved. But alas, back to Simone. So if people have been pushing this messaging for decades, why are we still talking about it now? Well, just because work started years ago does not mean the job is done. It would be foolish to think that programming that has been ingrained and enforced for literal centuries does not have any lasting effects. The decenter men movement is a modern reframing of long-standing feminist ideals. Its messages of empowerment have resonated with many who have realized just how much of their headspace has been taken up by the pursuit of male validation, sacrificing room for their own needs, desires, and sense of self. It's a push to reclaim all of that room. Now, all of that sounds great, right? So what's the problem? I fully believe that at its core, the movement is meant to help women recognize when they are losing themselves in an insatiable pursuit to be more appealing to men. It's a call to action to be consciously committed to one's own authenticity. And that there is the key word to this entire video. Authenticity. Self-empowerment is completely contingent on authenticity, because how can you feel empowered in yourself if you don't even know who you are? But knowing who you are, truly knowing who you are, requires not shying away from or suppressing any core part of you. And for many, the desire for companionship or partnership is a true core human part of them. Studies show that humans as a species are hardwired for human connection, and that fulfilling relationships can improve mental and physical well-being. Research from the Harvard Study of Adult Development indicates that the quality of personal relationships is a key factor in long-term happiness and well-being.
Many of our men, when they were starting out as young adults, really believed that fame and wealth and high achievement were what they needed to go after to have a good life. But over and over these 75 years, our study has shown that the people who fared the best were the people who leaned into relationships with family, with friends, with community.
In fact, in today's society where we are experiencing increased isolation and loneliness, the desire for meaningful connections has never been more relevant. Let me clarify, though, that the true messaging of the Decenter Men movement is truly pro-meaningful connections, in that it is encouraging women to reassess if they are placing too much importance and priority on solely their romantic relationships and the pursuit of which
he got this veal. You blew me off for a piece of politically incorrect meat?
At the detriment of everything else in their life, including all other relationships. But that is often misunderstood. So while the decentering men movement is empowering in theory, the message can sometimes be distorted. In some cases, it's twisted into shaming women who still desire romantic relationships or companionship, which is a normal human need. So instead of freeing women, this distortion creates a new kind of judgment in which wanting romance is labeled as weak or regressive. Now, let me remind you that aligning with the Decenter Men movement does not necessarily require completely cutting men out of your life. To decenter means to deprioritize. Unfortunately, probably due to people's ever-decreasing attention span, there is an ever-growing tendency for messaging to get lost in a game of telephone and become oversimplified to a point of no nuance. The no nuance, twisted interpretation of decenter men becomes no men. Don't think about them, don't talk about them, and turn your nose up at anybody who does. Here are some of the top comments on a TikTok about decentering men. It's lowest common denominator bullshit. Who are you dating? Instead of what are you thinking about, reading, learning, listening to, expanding on. Ask each other more. Now, I agree that it would definitely be boring if I was in a conversation with someone that only wanted to talk about guys. I think reacting to the simple mention of it, a very common question, in such an insulting way, might not be the kindest nor the most effective approach. I don't think conversations about men or relationships should be the sole focus of any hangout, but I do think it's one that commonly gets brought up, and it's a little bit weird to try to completely avoid it, or to act like someone is the lowest common denominator for bringing it up. Another comment says, my friend was going on and on about her boyfriend, and I was so bored and just nodded along. Now, if I was at brunch with a friend and all she talked about was her boyfriend's last snowboarding trip and the new boards he got and just random facts about her boyfriend, yeah, I would be bored out of my mind. But if my friend was opening up about things that her partner was doing and what that made her think or feel, I would feel very honored to get a look inside her mind at some of her most intimate moments, because being in a relationship can bring a lot of things out of you that never would be brought up otherwise.
If I'm too good for him, then how come I'm not with him?
I have got an idea. Let's blow off 7th and 8th, go to the mall, have a calorie fest, and see the new Christian Slater.
Yes! I think that connecting with people is about understanding each other and really seeing each other. And so getting access to someone's psyche in relation to their relationship falls into that category and increases connection. So if somebody was talking about their partner in a way that had nothing really to do with them, then super valid to get bored because you want to be connecting with the person in front of you, not their stupid boyfriend. But we can always redirect the conversation into being about them, and it can sometimes be even more connecting. So the problem isn't decentering men, it's how the movement has been co-opted to shame women who still want romance and love. For some, if you say you want a relationship, you might be met with, "Oh, you're so boy crazy," or "Oh, you're such a pick-me." I think that the underlying intentions of insults like that are coming from truly a loving place, because the person spewing that might just genuinely want to get to know you and is feeling like you being focused on boys, men, is an obstacle to that. I could do a whole other video about pick-me's, but the pick-me insult specifically, I think, is getting at the fact that we don't want anybody to change themselves just to appeal to others. But if we uphold that same goal, wanting people to stay true to themselves, if we push too hard on the don't talk about men narrative, we are being counterproductive, because that is a very natural part of a lot of people's lives. In the same way that religious people who very strongly push their beliefs onto others run the risk of instead pushing people away, the tactic of shame and judgment to push the ideology of decentering men runs the risk of alienating the very women who might need the message the most. Another way I've been noticing the subversion of this largely feminist ideology bleeding into territory of misogyny instead is related to the common tactic of divide and conquer. One of the most common strategies of any oppressor to keep the oppressed oppressed is divide and conquer. Misogyny has always thrived on pitting women against each other.
Made out with a hot dog. Oh my God, that was one time!
While it's extremely important to emphasize a need for balance between focusing on dating and focusing on yourself, ridiculing women for any mention of liking romance bleeds into misogynistic territory. And ridiculing women for wanting romance is so common. Honestly, women liking anything gets ridiculed, no matter what it is. Romance novels, one of the best-selling genres ever, a billion-dollar industry, gets mocked just because it's liked by primarily women. We have fantasy novels and media where people get to fantasize about being warriors or first-person shooters, but fuck me, right? If my dream is just to be treated nicely. Overall, like most things in the world, balance is key. The original goal of decentering men is empowering, but women should feel free to want what they authentically want, whether that's love or independence or both. Both extremes, hyper-focusing on men or shaming women at any sign of wanting romantic connection, deny us the freedom to be our full authentic selves. So let's not lose the plot here, guys. The whole point of the movement is to encourage women to be completely connected with their real selves, because at the end of the day, we always want people to be showing up as their real selves or as close to it as they can, because you can't connect with other people if they're not showing up as their full thing. So remember, let's keep nuance in the conversation. Let's not use this to further divide ourselves. Keep the main goals in mind.
I keep the main thing the main thing.
Let's celebrate women in the pursuit of being their full selves, whether that includes romance or not. It's about choice, and that's what really matters. This is a topic I am quite passionate about because I think there's a large misunderstanding of trying to separate people's thoughts and desires for a relationship and who they are as a person, when it is so interconnected. How we relate to others in our most intimate relationships, including our romantic relationships, can be quite a key factor in discovering our full self. So trying to keep self-discovery sterile from any conversations around relationships can sometimes deny us from truly connecting to each other. If you've made it to the end, thank you for sticking around. This is actually my first video of this kind. I'm extremely passionate about people's ability to fully connect with themselves and in turn connect with others in a more full and authentic way. And so topics like self-improvement, emotional intelligence, relational skills are things that I'm looking to explore on this channel. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, go ahead and click the subscribe button. Okay, I think that's all I have to say for today. She do be fluent in Japanese. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!